So the next position we're going to talk about now is the last of the dominant positions. So as a consequence of the way that we've been escaping now, where some of our escapes took us into the turtle position and we had to address that, a potential consequence of going to the turtle is you make some mistakes in the process of attempting your escapes and your opponent winds up taking your back. Okay? So what's going to be different now from when he staged the position is he's going to have the same arm position with the seatbelt, but now he's going to be able to enter two hooks. So he's going to be able to place one leg under each of your hips. What's going to change there is you have to quickly reorient yourself, because you can never, ever, ever allow yourself to be belly down on the floor, because that is the position where he can apply probably the most physical pressure and discomfort onto you. And it's going to be very, very difficult for you to defend anything at all, because the position in itself makes it very difficult for you to defend things, since your opponent is located directly behind you. So now what we need to do is orient ourselves so that if our opponent does get hooks, we have to go with our bellies up and onto our side, and we always have to maintain the same hand fight, okay? But now, the ability for him to choke me with the hand that comes up over my shoulder is much, much more dangerous than it has been before, okay? So what we're gonna look at now is methods of how to protect ourselves with hand fighting and extricate our hip from the position and our shoulder. All right, guys. So now we're in the position where my opponent has successfully gotten to my back. So he's in the most dominant place where he can be. All we have to do now is return ourselves to a place where we've tried to stay philosophically the whole time, which is my back should be on the floor, not with my opponent on it. Problem is, how do I do that if he's already attained that position? Well, first thing I need to understand is if he's already there, then the next subsequent thing he's going to try to do is submit me, right? Typically, the strongest moves that he can do from there are chokes. So I always have to pay attention to my hand fight. Once I am controlling the hand fight, which is 2-on-1, and I'm going to show a specific detail this time for how to really make sure you win that hand fight, now I can concentrate on getting my shoulders and my hips flat to the mat. So for our first one, let's say Josh enters his hooks. It doesn't really matter how we got here, but we can do it from the subsequent position where he takes my back from the turtle, okay? What I'm gonna do is, there are two sides we can potentially fall to, okay? There's the side where my shoulder is exposed, and there's the side where Josh's arm is over my shoulder. Typically, my opponent will want to fall to the side where his elbow is over my shoulder, okay? Now from here, he can start attempting things like rear naked chokes or placing his hand in my collar for collar chokes. So now, when I go to the hand fight, I don't want to just grab anywhere on his arm. What I want to do is I want to specifically target the opposable bone in his hand, right here. So I don't want to actually grab any individual fingers, okay? And I don't want to grab below at the wrist, because then I'm using strength against strength. It's the power of my arm versus the power of his arm. Now, granted, if I have 2-on-1, there's only going to be some very rare instances where my opponent will be stronger than me. But I don't want to have to use so much effort to defend myself. So what I am going to do here is try to place my hand over that opposable bone. And now, by trying to turn my hand down like this, it should be pretty impossible, even with just one hand, for Josh to be able to bring his hand into my collar or around my neck. Go ahead, Josh. See, so now I have good control over this. As long as I can maintain good control over that, now I don't have to worry so much about the attacks he can launch immediately. Now, the next problem I have to deal with is how do I get out of this position? The first escape we're going to do is called the arm barrier, right? So I've got my control on the opposable. I'm going to take my second hand and grab anywhere else on his arm that feels comfortable. Now my goal is to be able to pull this arm over to the other side of my head. Now I have a free lane towards the floor. I never want to sit up because it'll give him another opportunity to take my back. So now the idea is to get my shoulders flat to the mat. As my shoulders turn flat, notice he lost the hook because my hips will follow my shoulders in the same line. Now what's nice about this escape is that if I can place this arm in between us, I can now pull this arm down towards his opposite hip, and if Josh tries to turn towards me to get on top, it's actually pretty difficult for him to get up and over. So now there should be a window of time where as I pull this down, I should be able to continue to scoop my hip away and turn towards him, effectively reversing the position and ending up in his guard. Our second method of escape is going to be fairly similar. Problem is now, he's got a very strong seatbelt, and it becomes very difficult for me to disconnect his hands or to get that loop over my head. So now I have to deal with the consequences of the two potential sides where things could end up, right? So let's say we're here. Josh has his hooks, I have control on his arms, and let's say I have some say over what can happen here. For example, Josh wants to fall to this side, but I am able to drive my feet into the ground, and Josh is very tight on me. So now when I drive my feet into the ground and push up and at this angle towards his shoulder, it will turn us to the other side. Now, what's interesting about this is on this side, there is nothing over my shoulder, okay? So I should not have to disconnect his hands in any way to start my process of turning flat. Again, I want to find and isolate that opposable bone over the arm that's going to be the attacking arm, the one over my shoulder. I place both of my hands on that one, and now I begin the same process of taking my shoulders and my hip flat to the ground. What's different now is that we're going to arrive to a position where it becomes evident to my opponent that he can no longer stay on my back. And now, when he decides to turn up towards me, I don't have anything that I can do to stop him from doing that. And he typically has an advantage of getting there before me. So what I want to take advantage of in this instance is this hook. If you notice, as he's turning up, this hook remains here. So now for him to mount me, he's going to want to extract that hook and place it in the mount. What I am going to do is, as he is turning up, I'm going to place both my hands on his knees, ensuring that he only gets to half guard. Now, upon arriving to half guard, I want to quickly try to attain whatever inside positions I can, and I want to shrimp out and try to get to full guard if possible. Okay? But if half guard's as far as you can get, that's okay, because that's another one of the subsequent positions that we're going to be addressing soon. So now, we're going to do essentially the same escape. But now the problem is, I was unable to bring myself to the freed shoulder side, what I would call the strong side for me, right? So now I fall into the side that's weak for me, which is here, where he has the advantage of immediately being able to use this arm to begin attacking the neck. So now, again, just like in the first escape, the priority is control of that arm, and specifically trying to find the opposable portion of his thumb, okay? Now, unlike the first escape, I don't have to disconnect his hands or widen his loop in any way, shape, or form. All I'm going to do is start using my legs to really drive myself flat to the ground, okay? And I'm trying to take this arm and place it inside. See, at some point, my shoulder is going to project itself into his forearm so much that his hands will disconnect, okay? What I do, however, want to avoid is should Josh have some kind of grip on my lapel, okay, that would be bad, even if it's low. So one of the things that I want to do to relieve anything that may appear here is, as I'm doing this escape, I want to make sure that my eyes turn towards my opponent, so that now I end up here where the strongest part of his arm is across the back of my neck, rather than here where it would be across a carotid artery. Okay? So once I arrive here, he's got the same dilemma on his hands. He cannot maintain himself on my back, and so he must transition to the top. As he does so, look, my hands are immediately targeting that hook. I know that that hook is going to turn into my half guard. As he comes up, I shrimp and place it in between my legs. Again, I've attained my half guard. There is no reason to stop here. I should now look for inside frames and continue to leg escape out until I can get to full guard. Our last position on the back is not so much an escape as something simple, a simple mistake that my opponent usually tends to make when they're newer to Jiu-Jitsu, and something I can quickly take advantage of to just kind of put a stop to everything right then and there. Right? So let's say Josh takes my back. One of the first things that we want to learn about taking someone's back, if you're Josh, is that you should never, ever, ever cross your feet. Okay? Now, very simple. Okay? Doesn't matter if I fall to the strong or the weak side. I maintain my defense here, always fighting the position of the attack. Now, however, because his feet are crossed, there's something very simple I can take advantage of. All I'm going to do is I'm going to take a leg. I personally prefer my bottom leg, the one that's against the floor, and I'm going to bring it up, and I'm going to bring my calf over his feet here. Okay? Now, I'm going to lock this leg over my shin. And now, while still holding my defense, all I have to do is project my hips forward, and that should break Josh's ankle, and he will have to tap. Okay, there we go.